Hypothetically speaking, there is a girl who once lived the lesbian lifestyle. She then turned her life over to Christ. Some Christians tell her she can never be straight, but she can stop living the lifestyle of homosexual. Is any biblical proof of this?
Yes. I've got one. Totally. I will speak on this from personal experience. It is totally possible to have lived a lesbian lifestyle and be converted into Christianity, be made, brought to your knees by what you have done, made complete realization, still make some mistakes, and yes, that taste for women does go away. It is not something that you have to live in fear of. There's plenty of people who live completely straight lifestyles and are single doing it or are married doing it. Take Jackie Hill Perry. You guys don't know who that is. She used to be a stud. For those who don't know what a stud is, that is somebody who lives a lesbian as a man. They carry themselves like a man. In some cases, they do other things like a man. And you know, she is now married with a child. Her taste for women has completely gone away. Me personally, my taste for women has gone completely away. It is totally possible to live a life after you have truly met Christ, to be brought to your knees and understand that what you have done is wrong, and God will give you that grace to take away that taste for women. I had a hard time with it for a very long time because I struggled between my faith and really wanting to be loved. It's really what it comes down to, is being loved. Very plainly, I was in a situation where I hated men. I just could not stand the sight of a man and think that he was a good person, because I had been molested for a number of years by somebody in the church. And it destroyed my view of men and who men in the church were. And it just took away that taste for wanting to be with a man. And then it became worse as I got older. I have come to a place now in my life, there's people in here who can vouch for that. My taste for women has completely gone away. And I'm just a different person. It's complete 180. I don't have that taste for women. Even when I used to be, I mean, it was so bad that like pornographic preferences, as sensitive as that is to talk about for a woman to have dealt with pornography. I've dealt with it. It's been there. It exists. And my pornographic preferences were lesbian. And even when I decided that I wanted to make a switch to God, while my pornographic preferences didn't go away right away, my mindset started to change. Now I can't, I have compassion for people who are lesbian and who are questioning their faith. I don't think I would have been able to have such compassion, because at one point I was like, totally I couldn't, there was one point where I was asexual, then I was completely homophobic, then I became a homosexual, so I have compassion for people who have been in those situations, who have been in those shoes. And you know, I can love on people in those places, in those hard places, and I'm very different and completely radically and sold out and on fire for Christ. And I believe that one day I will be married, and I believe that one day I will have children. I believe that one day it will all come into fruition, but you don't necessarily need that. It's sometimes your best testimony is just being set apart for God.
It's regeneration. I mean, the very foundational core to what we believe with salvation is like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. It's transformation. People change. People can change, and God is the one who changes them inside and out. And it's the same thing with. Okay, you could say the guy who was like, oh, I was a drunkard, I came to Christ and I changed. It's the same thing. Oh, I was a homosexual, I came to Christ and I changed. Change happens. If change doesn't happen, then that's like, woo, that's a problem. Something's going to change when you come to Christ. It has to. That's just a big impact in your life.
That you can meet Jesus and do change, because I have my own sister who is lesbian. And it's like for people to say that you can't and will never change, that's just, and for Christians to say that, that's not showing grace at all. That's not showing love. And then it's going to be the power of God that will sustain her and she needs a stable support system that will keep it going.
If it were genetic, then by some magical default, at least 3 people in this room have it. It is not a disease that you contract. It is not something that you catch by sneezing. It is a choice that you make. It is conscious sin, and people don't realize that. There is, I feel like with anything, there is situation, and then there is spiritual transformation that happens in that process. And as there's a situation that would happen that would cause you to make such a choice. There's always a situation that causes you to make such a choice. You aren't just born that way. Something happened that made you decide that you didn't want to do whatever you were doing, living inside of the will of God at that time. You decided that you wanted to step outside of it so that you could do whatever you decided that you wanted to do because you feel like what you were doing was better. That is also coupled with demons that come and decide that they want to continuously attack you in that. Homosexuality is a spirit. It is a spirit that inhabits you that you decide that you want to step into when you step outside of the will of God. You make that choice to then have that spirit come and part of you. It's like that Charlie game that's going around.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Just like that. You invite that spirit in. It can be invited in based upon a situation, and then you have your eyes open. My cousin is dealing with it now. There's spirits that are going on. I believe that the spiritual realm is a true, serious war that you have to be conscious of and very careful with, and you do not play with that. So homosexuality is a choice, but it also is coupled with being attacked by demons in the process. And once you have made your choice to come to God about this situation, the demons can be set free. It's like releasing the demons from the wild pigs. To the wild pigs. They left. You have to go somewhere else. So it's not going to be in you forever. You can make that choice.
All right, one other person.
I feel like I felt too much tonight, but I have to say this.
The Bible says, and you shall find the truth, and the truth will set you free. But then as humans, we look for generalization so we can understand certain things better. So we feel like, oh, I understand this and I have a hand on this, I understand this. And as a Christian, I'm not totally against science, but research actually has a genetic relationship to homosexuality. Well, they probably didn't find 100% when it comes to human, but when it comes to the animal kingdom, there's actually homosexual relationship. And I'm not saying it makes it right or wrong, but when we're speaking, let us make sure we're speaking the truth. And I'm not saying demons don't exist. I'm African. Demons exist.
So with the genetic part, you had to see it in order for you to imitate it, yes?
Well, no, mutation can happen. It doesn't have to be initiated. It has to be initiated.
I don't know why we separated the homosexual thing with are we born that way? Because I've counseled young children, and I'm talking about 2, 3 years old, that will steal your pencil if they walk past your desk. We're born sinners. Jesus didn't make somebody a homosexual. Jesus didn't make us born sinners. We're born sinners. That's the way we're born. We're born genetically defective. We're born sinners. So you can pick and choose the poison, but we're all born bent a certain way, and it's towards sin. I don't know why Christianity feels like we have to defend homosexuality. Like, you can't be born that way, because you'll never win an argument with anybody that way. Just say, hey, we're all born sinners, and pick your vice. We're all bent towards something. Me personally, I've got 2 brothers. One of them from the gate, like to steal stuff. Me from Jump Street, I wanted to fight you if you looked at me. I mean, I'm talking about little diapers, let's fight. I had 4 kids, and they all have their thing. And I'm telling you, you say you have to say it, but I'm like, they all grew up in the same home, and they're all bent different ways. They're not reproducing something they saw in me. They're reproducing the sin that's in their blood when they're born. So we just need, I think, especially when it comes to homosexual lesbianism, I don't know why we separate those and say, Jesus didn't make you that way. Jesus didn't make any of us the way that we're born. We're all born sinners. And although we're fearfully and wonderfully made, we all are aggressively seeking after sin. We just find it in different areas.
We don't have a sin that we gravitate towards.
That's good. Interesting. It says, why are women in leadership positions looked down upon in the church? So we'll just do any 2 people who want to answer this question.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times when you look at it, even dating back towards like to Adam and Eve, Adam was in charge of everything, right? And he was the first one to be held responsible for what was going on. He was held responsible for Eve, eating fruit. So when we take it into the aspect of leadership, well, then it's the same thing. It's the same thing, and so if it's a woman or a woman trying in leadership position in the church, maybe it would be looked at, not so much looked down upon, but expecting the man to be there to take that position, that's his expected position to, it actually back in the days, in like colonial days, that's what the guy was. Like he was a pastor, he was a father, he was all that, and then and the lady wasn't allowed to do that. She wasn't allowed in any of those positions. She was a mother and she was a caregiver. So I think in that sense, that might be one of the reasons why it's like, we lean more towards guys, being taking that role and taking that responsibility. I don't think they should be looked down upon because they have. There's a lot of amazing women who have gifts and talents, and who make impacts. But I think it just goes back to the whole attitude that the man will take that first, that he's held responsible.
Last person?
I just know, and like I always used to wonder that as a younger person. I always like thought about when I learned about women can't be pastors. I was like, say what? Like why? Like, and when my youth pastor talked about leadership, deacons, and pastors, and we looked at 1 Timothy, like there are very like standards for leadership. Like it's a man of one wife, and like there's a lot of these requirements. But I think what people miss is if you go into Paul's letters, how many times does he say, I urge you to encourage Euodia, Cynthia, all these women that did all of these wonderful things. That, and guess what? They weren't pastors, but they still did wonderful things for God. Mm-hmm. And I think, it's hard not, I feel bad. I'm sorry. But like, I feel like, realize it does not devalue you as women. That's the biggest thing I would ever want to tell a woman, is that it does not devalue you as a person and as what God can use. You can lead people to Christ. You can be an impact where you are. It's not that those rules are not to punish you. It's just the way God did it.
In high school, me and Seth, we had to deal with a lot of people that always believed it was silly to believe in Christ or just to believe in anything. And they say, look, science explains how God doesn't even exist. And I'm like, well, listen, you can't explain how the universe is here. It just came out of just nowhere. You can't say, okay, with this darkness, and then out of nowhere, two gases collide and stuff like. Where did that all come from? Obviously, God is the artist. Obviously, he created all this. And then I'm like, okay, explain the snowflakes, explain the leaves, how they're perfectly aligned, and it looks like an artist drew it. Explain all that. Science can't explain that. God explains it. So try to make sense with what you're saying, because we actually make sense when we're talking about Christianity and how God is making the artwork of what he does with the mountains and stuff. It's God made it, not man. So that's one thing. When you're debating with scientists, they all get really emotional, and then they get stuck when you talk about the artistry of God. And then also, how come each human, we all have morals? We can't help it. We know we did something wrong. We feel bad. How come we have that feeling? Science didn't put it in there. God put it in there. So that's how you gotta get them in debates. You just counter back with stuff like that, and then you win.